Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you. Last minute message. I'm sure you've heard this a couple of times now. If you are on Twitter, give us a retweet to the new handle at @itgetsbetter_s. We just tweeted out our panel for today. And I'm so happy to have this conversation with our friends from Twitter, who I'm going to introduce in a second. And but first, let me thank our sponsors for the Global Summit, Riot Games and Help Lab. Without their support, this wouldn't be possible. And welcome to day 4 of the Global Summit of It Gets Better Project 2020. And I'm so proud to be here. My name is Alex Oroe. I'm the Global Programming Coordinator at It Gets Better Project. And also, I'm the Executive Director at It Gets Better Mexico. We were going to be joined by my colleague of It Gets Better Paraguay, Diego Bazan. He's one of the co-founders, but he's having a little technical issues, but we're moving ahead. But before we do, I wanted to do this live with him because today it's It Gets Better Paraguay's 8th anniversary. They just turned today 8 years of working in Paraguay, and they are the second oldest affiliate in the network. So, but anyways, big congratulations to the team in Paraguay. It's not been easy for them in particular because Paraguay has its own challenges. And but I mean, to do this for 8 years at It Gets Better Project, we just turned 10 years as an organization last September. We know that it takes a lot. It takes a lot of investment of time, talent, and funds to do what we do. And what we do is inspire LGBTQ youth around the globe through storytelling. And one of the platforms that has been very, very vital to our work, especially not just because how easy it is to share messages and turn something of value very easy to share. But also because lately, especially, like it's been a couple of years now that Twitter as a company has turned their mission into creating healthier conversations on the internet. And that's why for today's theme of the Global Summit, digital storytelling, we wanted to have our friends from Twitter today here. And I'm going to let them to introduce themselves. But first, thanks to our friends at Twitter Policy and Government and Philanthropy, the team that has made also this possible through Twitter for Good and many other initiatives that we've done for a couple of years now. But from Twitter Mexico, we have Diane Silva.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone. It's my honor to be here. I'm Diane Silva. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in the sales team in Mexico as a client account manager in Twitter Mexico and a proud member of Twitter Allies and Twitter Open.
Thank you, Diane. And I guess you are in the States, right? But also from Twitter and from those two business resource groups, Twitter Allies and Twitter Open, Michael Samper, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Alex. My name is Michael Samper. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm based out of San Francisco. I also work for Twitter on the product insights and experimentation team as a software engineer. And I'm also a super proud member of Twitter Allies as well as Twitter Open.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So to get things started, as you know, at It Gets Better, we're all about our story. So first question, tell us a little bit about your own story and how you ended up where you are at Twitter, which I think both your personal journey of self-discovery and acceptance kind of is a little intertwined with your own experience as a professional where you are now, right? Diane, what about you?
Yeah, totally. Well, for me, Twitter has always been my favorite platform since ever. I have always heard their values, their reason to be. So when I was invited to join, it was a dream come true for me. And in a more personal side, Twitter has a huge impact in my coming out story because for me, it's the first workplace where I'm fully out. And this is because Twitter is so inclusive. Twitter fills you with courage to be who you are, to embrace who you are. So working at Twitter and being out in the place that I work is a huge change in my life because I only used to be out with my closest group of friends or my family, but now I can feel proud of myself, be completely who I am. So this is just one of the many reasons why I love where I work.
Awesome. Thank you, Diane. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, very similarly to Diane, I would say Twitter is one of my favorite social media platforms. I think I've been on Twitter now since 2015, so 5 years, and I'm proud of that. But I think one of the main things that brought me to Twitter was my interest in the way that it really supports organic conversations. I really loved the aspect of Twitter where you can join conversations with people that you don't necessarily know, but you might have a mutual follower or you might have a common interest. And I also love the way that Twitter had been and has been used for so many different social justice movements and mobilization. And in terms of how it connected to my coming out story, I think seeing the LGBTQ plus community so well represented in Twitter, seeing how they took up space on the platform and how they were so connected and open kind of inspired me to do the same.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I've been on the platform personally from 2009. And back then I was in college and I do remember that the environment in the platform was has always been very political, but unlike today that you have many universes within Twitter, right? Twitter sports, Twitter politics, Twitter news, Twitter entertainment, movies, music. There's so much going on. But at the beginning, well, it wasn't, I don't think it was the year that it all started, but when I joined the platform, it was so attractive to me because you would connect with people that otherwise you wouldn't be able to access, right? And it's still very true today. And from the Gets Better Mexico perspective, so far, even it is our main platform because it's the one that has the bigger audience out of the other platforms that we have. But it has truly been the platform that has connected us with supporters and many people that want to share our message. So on that, I wanted to connect this next question with you talking about your own experience, your personal experience, and how that has been, very central of how you've developed professionally because of how free you feel at Twitter, right? So tell us about Twitter Allies and Twitter Open and explain a little bit about what they do internally, but also the initiatives that you have, like with organizations like us outside Twitter. Diane?
Sure. Well, for me, first of all, to be out and having these different organizations that can be like Twitter Allies or Twitter Open, it has a huge impact in my work because I can be who you are. And that really inspired me to do my job and to be grateful at the company that I work, especially because we spend a lot of time in the office, or at least before the pandemic. But it's a place where you spend a lot of time, and not being able to be completely honest or who you are is not life. So having this, and not only knowing that the companies support you, but also have this kind of business that can also help you to connect with other people, to connect with people that share your story, that share some emotions. From the Turala side, like people that we all know that like Hispanic or Latin American user, we have certain stereotypes or labels that are and from the Twitter Open, also how can we connect this with our story, and how can we improve our work that we do in our daily basis. So for me, having this and that Twitter push this, it's really, really, really helpful in my work too, so I can be more happy.
Awesome. And you, Michael, what's been your experience with those two business resource groups?
Yeah, so I think first of all, kind of like Diane talked about, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's super important that you can show up as your authentic self at work, because obviously when you show up as yourself, you do the best work. And through our inclusion and diversity team, I think they're doing a fantastic job of making sure that we're comfortable to do that. And our business resource groups like Twitter Alas and Twitter Open give us the community that we need to feel comfortable at work, and to kind of have people that we can relate to and have important conversations with. Twitter Alas and Twitter Open do an amazing job of doing programming within and also outside of Twitter, covering important things happening in the world, doing education pieces, helping to educate allies as well. Honestly, it makes work so much more enjoyable, because like Diane said, you spend so much time in the office during normal times. And even now, even though it's virtual,
incluso ahora, a pesar de que todo es virtual y que no estamos yendo a la oficina, es muy bueno.
It's extremely useful and you feel supported.
Yeah, you mentioned working from home, and we have to recognize that this year has been very challenging in many ways. And one of the things that have occurred, not only in the US, but across the world, in terms of like a social awakening to the different crises that we've already had before. They're not new, but because of the pandemic, we've seen new voices rising up, right? And Twitter has been very critical to how those movements have organized in this past year in particular. What do you think both your company, your organization, and It Gets Better through this new initiative, It Gets Better Español, talking to Hispanic LGBTQ youth people in the US and abroad. How do you think those initiatives and both organizations can help to precisely uplift their voices? Diane?
Well, Twitter purpose is to serve the public conversation. But like you said before, I mean, we're working not only to serve the public conversation, but to drive healthy conversation in a safe environment where all voices can be heard. So working together, we can create a powerful impact to educate users, to eliminate gender stereotypes or all kind of stereotypes, and focus on the purpose that we have, that it's like to drive the right message with respect, to actually achieve a great impact.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, so like Diane said, our role is to serve the public conversation. So for us, one of the most important things is making sure that we provide that forum and we allow it to happen in a safe and healthy way, obviously, because we're focusing on healthy conversations. And then from the perspective of It Gets Better, I think having all these affiliates is amazing, because it allows you to really focus your message depending on who you're targeting. And obviously, as we know, the Latin American community is super, super diverse, and everyone's experience is not uniform, even though that might be the misconception that some people have. So I think there's a great opportunity there to really focus on everyone's unique experiences and have important conversations through those avenues.
And talking about, I think Dan, you mentioned some stereotypes that both communities have, right? If you're LGBTQ or if you belong to a specific Hispanic community, you know, especially in the U.S. where lately, you know, you've had an election and there's always this discussion about the Latino vote and the you know, also there's this idea of the queer vote, right? What do you think are the biggest misconceptions about those two communities in your own experience, and how do you think we can tackle them through this mission, right? Driving healthier conversations. Diane?
Well, this is the importance of the affiliates that we have, because I think that there's a lot of misconceptions in the Latin community. So it's up to us and all the allies that we have to push those stereotypes, to start making changes, because we have a huge path in the way. I mean, there's a lot of labels or stereotypes based on the way that you act and the way that you dress, or even the sex that you were born. So I believe that it's really through education that we can bring down those stereotypes, and working together as a company to build those full, through education. And this can actually help the whole community. I mean, if we work together as individuals and companies, we can have this, like driving more inclusion, like use the right pronouns, validation of all genders. So it's up to us and the companies and the tools that the companies give us to make that change that can perpetrate in all the community.
Yeah, you mentioning just respecting everyone's pronouns. It's such an important thing that people usually don't give or think about how important that can be to a non-binary person or a trans person, right? And talking about that, I saw, like, for this Hispanic Heritage Month in the US, the handle Twitter Alas launched like a new hashtag, like todos juntos or something like that. I don't remember, but you tweeted out like the different like in the different gender way of saying it, like todas juntas, todos juntos, todes juntes, or something like that. And there's always this in Spanish, at least, it's easier to be neutral in English, but in Spanish, most words have gender. So there's always this discussion about how to be grammatically correct and be also neutral, which is very tough. And just seeing this action by Twitter and promoting a gender neutral option in Spanish was very meaningful, and we, at least our network, noticed, and we used it. And you know, I think those little actions, very symbolic, very you know, it doesn't take too much, right? And people kind of just get so overwhelmed by this specific topic when it's actually so much easier to understand, right? And do. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think going off of what you were just talking about, we talk about intersectionality so much at Twitter, and obviously making that small step to make everyone feel included is super important. And I know it's like something that we were talking about when we were planning Hispanic Heritage Month and trying to figure out how to deliver a message that kind of felt inclusive to everyone. So it's really awesome to hear that you all noticed, because it just goes to show the power of Twitter, the power of having a platform, and just how like simple actions can make everyone feel like they're a part of the conversation and like they're included. And it's really exciting to hear about.
Yeah, we noticed. And it was a very fun hashtag with an emoji kind of thing. And we've seen that throughout the years. Every time there's a new hashtag about a specific community, you all do in different languages, which is fun to see, right? At the beginning it was love wins and love is love, and just in English, I think the first year. But on the second year that you all did this, it was very, very accessible in different languages. And this new action by Twitter Allies, it was very meaningful. And on this note, I'd like to also let people know here on the conversation, we are on a Zoom call, but we are also live streaming this on Periscope. So I'll be checking out the comments to see if there's any question. If you're on the Zoom call, just feel free to drop a question. We have a Q&A feature. So if you have a question, just write it down there, and I would probably read that here if we have time. If you're watching this on Periscope or Twitter, I'm also looking out at the stream, so I'll be looking at the comments as well. Okay, I think we have our first question. Okay, this is from Stella. She says, I see programming as a means to attain financial freedom for BIPOC, LGBTQIA plus communities. Does Twitter plan to elevate access to coding education for LGBTQIA plus BIPOC who are currently in a socio-economically disadvantaged situation? This is totally for me, by the way. I am the community I speak of. Thank you for your question. So if Michael, maybe you know about this, if there's any, for example, I'll say this. From It Gets Better, actually, It Gets Better Mexico, recently we created with it was the team at Twitter Gov Policy and Philanthropy that helped us create a couple of guides, a couple of materials about simplifying. The rules are very simple, but for LGBTQ people, safety online is a big issue, right? And we see a lot of cyberbullying on all platforms, and sometimes it's a matter of doing what you do at Twitter, of being more proactive in tackling the cyberbullying here, but also it takes a lot of educating users, right? And as an organization at It Gets Better Mexico, we decided to reach out to Twitter to see if we could do a couple of guides for our audiences, for queer youth, to know how to protect themselves better, and also know the key rules for them to better report any kind of abuse, right? So we did that, and actually just recently we did a couple of workshops with the help of the U.S. Embassy in Mexico for two audiences, one for nonprofits in general, and the second one for journalists, just to educate them on many of the things that nonprofits to take advantage of the digital technologies, and journalists to educate them on LGBTQ issues. And those two materials from Twitter were really helpful because they didn't know, for example, that dead naming trans people was against the rules on Twitter, for example, right? So Twitter does a lot of collaborations like this with many nonprofits around the globe. And if you are on Twitter, just I would say follow the nonprofit handle, which is always updating on the upcoming workshops that they'll have. So that's one way to see the kind of programming that they have in the future by Twitter or in partnership with other nonprofits. But on that question, Michael, do you know about any specific?
Yeah, so I can speak on the university recruiting front. We have a lot of amazing programs that are targeted towards underrepresented minorities. We have a specific program that you can apply to that's targeted for LGBTQ plus students. And this all kind of leads into a pipeline to maybe find a career and an internship at Twitter. So these are amazing resources to check out, in addition to everything that Alex mentioned.
Awesome. How do people can find about those opportunities, Michael? Is there a specific handle on Twitter? I know you have like for interns, you have for nonprofits, you have for so many different audiences.
Yeah, so for Twitter University specifically, you're going to want to follow @TwitterU, and they're always posting about a bunch of opportunities, and they're definitely a good follow.
Awesome. Okay, so we have another question. Thank you, Stella, for your question. The next one is for Jeremiah, from Jeremiah. And they say, within this program at Twitter, is there any support to have dialogues with people within the community with either activities or sorry, I'm translating because it's in Spanish. O algún apoyo a los usuarios son parte de. Okay, Jeremiah is asking if there's again another kind of initiative by Twitter to push for dialogue with people within the community, if there's like an activity like that. Again, I'll say that it's pretty much the same answer that I gave. It's not really related to the very specific previous one that Stella made, but in general, Twitter, instead of especially for community related topics, I see that you usually partner with other nonprofits and subject matter experts. And whenever there's like a community-based activity by Twitter and only for Twitter, it's usually between the business resource groups, right? So tell us a little bit about, if you know about the history of those two business resource groups, about Twitter Allies and Twitter Open. Do you know how they all started? Or a recent activation or something that has been meaningful to you?
I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is Hispanic Heritage Month for Twitter Allies. Back when I was in school, I used to help plan Hispanic Heritage Month. So seeing it on the Twitter front is really amazing, and seeing how we had activations both internally and externally was awesome. I remember one of the funnest things that we did internally was we had a J-Lo Super Bowl choreography class, and that was super fun because that was super viral for a while. So everyone was super excited to be able to learn J-Lo's choreography. And then we just had a lot of educational pieces also. I mean, like one of the things I think we talked about was the intersection of Blackbirds and Twitter Allies, and talking about what it means to be Afro-Latino. And that's always like a super important conversation. because like I said, intersectionality is so important because a lot of us belong to so many of these different identities.
Totally. Diane, for you on Twitter Open, have you been part of a specific activation internally just for tweets?
Well, just like you mentioned, internally we have done different activation or activities. For start, like I want to mention, we need to start understanding ourselves so we can share this with the community. So we have different speakers that join with us in something that we call tea time. So basically we have the Twitter Mexico office connected, and we drive conversation like how to be more inclusive. Or for Mexico, like you were saying, it's really hard to have a neutral way of speaking. So we contact some specialists that was like, what is the best way that we can translate that into a more local way of speaking. Just we try to drive this kind of activation, like how to be more inclusive or how to start changing the mindset that we used to have. For example, in some time we also talking like it's something because as Mexican know that, for example, people first saw you and it's like, do you have a boyfriend? And it's not because they are not inclusive, it's just because we're used to ask that. So we work really, really hard to be more neutral in that aspect. And do you have someone important? Do you have a partner? And to start making that kind of changes that can actually make an impact, starting first internally, but that we know that have an impact beyond that.
Awesome. Besides being today the 8th anniversary of It Gets Better Paraguay, it's also the International Day of Human Rights. And that actually on Twitter, you can see the hashtag Human Rights Day or Stand Up for Human Rights. And you'll see a fun little emoji next to it. And so it's very convenient that we have people from Twitter here today also to talk about that. Just talking about how, especially, lately with the political discussions and all the social movements that we've seen arising from, in reaction to many of the political events this year in the US and abroad. A lot of hate speech has, being part of the conversation, unfortunately. And there's always this double vision of freedom of speech. In Mexico, our Supreme Court, for example, says that we don't consider hate speech part of free speech, right? So it's not protected constitutionally. But in the US, there's another broader vision of that. And people say hate speech is fought with more speech, right? In Twitter, it's a very one of the platforms, especially for activists and journalists around the globe. And we've seen how the platform has been used by many of the revolutions lately and many of the movements like the Black Lives Matter. So it's been also very true in the LGBTQ community. And besides education, right, as the example I just gave of the activation we did with Twitter Gov and Twitter and It Gets Better Mexico with educating our audiences about the rules and how they can protect themselves. What else do you think organizations like It Gets Better and our global affiliate network can do to, drive healthier conversations and just be a balance to the hate speech that it's going on. Michael, do you want to start?
Sure. So I think one of the first things that I'll mention is obviously it's good to have a grasp of the Twitter rules and policies so that you know when to report content so that our teams can take a look and take action on it. But also from the engineering front, I will mention that we've worked on a bunch of amazing features that kind of help you have more control of the conversation, such as our new hidden replies feature and our conversation controls feature. So I think kind of using these features, depending on the type of conversation that you're trying to have, can be useful to kind of have more control over the conversation and drive it in the right direction.
Yeah, actually, I love that new feature that you can limit who can reply to you, only people that you follow, for example. I use that a lot because sometimes it's just like, no, I need to hide a lot of comments. But yeah, I really love that feature, especially for activists that have to, face a lot of heat and criticism, and sometimes also people misunderstand what it is about on the platform and what is a real person, even though they might have like a fake profile picture and just like a couple of followers, and could seem a little fishy, but still it's not a bot, right? So education and knowing these new features also give you more control of the experience. And also, I don't really understand people that like logging to any social platform and they kind of get overwhelmed by what's happening, because you can curate your own timeline. I'm like, well, who are you following on the platform? And I follow, of course, all the affiliate network at It Gets Better. But there's like tons of animal rights nonprofits that just share a lot of content that make me smile. And I get to learn a lot on Twitter. Just I can spend hours there. So Diane, what do you think? A couple of tips that you like to give to people on how to protect themselves and curate their experience on the platform.
Sure. Just like you said and Michael said, I mean, we're always trying as a Twitter to improve the healthy conversation, but like some tips like you were mentioning is like you can curate who you follow. I mean, it's up to you. And once that you start following, for example, activists from the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of recommendations that the platform gives you. Or also, we also launched this year the conversation topics. So you can follow conversations. So you don't have to specifically follow users, but conversations. Mix, for example, I also love dogs. So I follow this topic called dogs. And it gave me a lot of puppy content. And it's up to me what kind of content I want to have in the platform, what is my experience that I want to have at that moment. And also adding to what Michael was saying, it's like to have a better experience as a user, we have to understand and know what are the because as Twitter, we're always trying to offer a better and safe environment to all the users and right respect, so everyone can have a communication. And we're trying to drive communication between different users, but always with respect. So it's up to us, like we want to follow, what kind of content we want to have. So by having this and making up to us this kind of depuration, we can have a really, really great experience in the platform.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. And something that I get to talk to my colleagues in the other affiliates, whenever there's a tough conversation in their countries or just on the platform, as it gets better, we were born 10 years ago in response to the suicide deaths by many young people, that some of them we will never know if they were LGBTQ themselves. They were too young, and most of them didn't identify as such back then. But out of that very tough conversation, this message of hope was born, and we realized that we were not connecting with youth at that moment, because there's talking about, we were saying earlier, that there's this stigma, right, around our identities, what people think when they identify ourselves as Hispanic or queer. Most of the times when it's about the LGBTQ issue, there's a lot of stigma around having LGBTQ adults talking to youth, right? And It Gets Better kind of just broke that barrier. And because we didn't need anyone's permission now, right? We were able to talk to LGBTQ youth directly through our own stories, doing storytelling. And definitely the social media has, changed so many things. And for us and how we build community, this is the biggest way, I think, it has changed for the better, how we can reach out to kids that may not, foresee a future, a happy one, being who they are, right? So on that note, you can go longer than a tweet. But what message of hope would you give not only people and youth that might be watching right now, but what's the message of hope that you would have given to yourselves if you could, as a younger selves, a younger Michael and younger Diane? What message of hope you would give to yourselves?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
But for me, that I would say, like, especially the name "It Gets Better," it's actually real for me. So it would be like, it does get better, Diane. You have to be brave. I mean, there's nothing shame with being who you are. And so if you are who you are, and it's going to take courage, everything will be good. Just be who you are, because if you're who you are, there are going to be a lot of people who care about you. You're going to meet great people, great organizations. So there's nothing more powerful to be yourself. Just never stop being who you are.
That's beautiful, Diane. Thank you. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I think for me, the message would be to take time and discover who you really are. I mean, I think, at least when I was younger, I felt like I was in a rush to really like understand myself. And obviously now I've learned that it's kind of a journey. So understanding who you are is a journey, and kind of be open to discovering that. And then be yourself. At the end of the day, that's how you'll be happiest.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. We have one last question here on the Q&A feature. This is a very good question that I think could help a lot of the affiliates that are tuning in right now. We have people from Guatemala, we have people from Paraguay, of course, and Mexico, Colombia, and so many others. The question is, it seems really difficult to attract engagement on Twitter without needing something to go viral or without being verified. Our smaller channels in the network can really struggle sometimes. Any tips on how we can elevate our content and attract more engagement?
Well, from my side, I will always say that be consistent. I mean, it's not going to be sometimes easy, but be consistent. I mean, sorry, always create real content, interesting content. Not just post one time and hope that go viral. You have to be patient. You have to be consistent. Even when you start small, that will eventually pay off. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I think another great tip is to make sure that you're really engaging with your audience. If you look at Twitter, a lot of the most successful, at least brand accounts, really engage with their audience. For example, I always like to quote or talk about Wendy's because they do a great job of actually responding to people under their tweets. And that really gets people excited about the content, right? Because you have this account that's interacting with you. So it really makes you feel like it's a conversation versus like it's like a tweet that everyone's just responding to. So if you want engagement yourself, you kind of have to engage back.
Awesome. And we have people from Guatemala, and also there's, which actually is one of our newest or youngest affiliates in the network. Also Argentina and Brazil are very new to the network. And we'll be reaching out, especially to those teams, to follow through different opportunities of training and support, not just with our partners at Twitter, but internally as It Gets Better. It Gets Better Español, it's precisely a new initiative by It Gets Better in the US to both speak to Hispanic LGBTQ youth, but also support our network, because we reckon that it could be a challenge from country to country. And also there's so many other countries where we don't have an affiliate yet. And that doesn't mean we cannot tell LGBTQ stories in those countries as well. So that's why It Gets Better Español is now live. And thank you so much to you, Michael and Diane, for being in this panel. Thank you to Twitter for being a great partner to us at It Gets Better with this new initiative. And you know, it's been a couple of years now. Twitter was part of our global summit last year in New York City for Pride. So we're so happy to have you back as a partner. And thank you to everyone who's tuning in, who's actually not tuning in, but just who watched the entire panel conversation with us here on Zoom. And for those that are watching over on Twitter and Periscope, thank you so much.